Number one, we're talking about the proper mindset of readiness and willingness. All I'm going to say right now is that if you carry a gun, you have to be prepared to use deadly force should the gravest of extremes arise. There's no point in carrying a gun if you're not willing to use it to save your life or the life of somebody else under the mantle of your protection should you be faced with an imminent threat of death or grave bodily harm. You need to learn the laws of the jurisdictions in which you live and travel, including federal law, insofar as possession, purchase, transfer of firearms, as well as carry. You need to learn about what states recognize what states. If you're going to travel in a state, you need to know, is my permit recognized in that state? Keeping in mind that even if a state that you're traveling in recognizes your Florida permit that you're going to get, they don't have the same laws as Florida, which means you need to get up on the internet and find out what their laws are with regards to where you can and can't carry. You need to learn about the level of force continuum. That means the escalation and de-escalation of force, all the way up to deadly force. We will only cover that very briefly in this class. That is part of the defensive firearms class's curriculum. You need to learn about how your handgun, i.e. pistol or revolver, works. You don't want to buy a power tool and not know how it works, at least rudimentarily, enough so that you understand its mechanisms. It would be like buying a car and not understanding how to start the ignition or to shift gears. You need to know how your firearm works. And, of course, you need to know how to operate your particular firearm so that you can work it smoothly. Of course, there are many different modern handguns out there, different manuals of operation, different platforms, and you need to read the owner's manual for your firearm and take some competent training in how to use your firearm effectively in terms of shooting it safely and precisely. You need to learn about how to secure your firearm, how to safely store it, and how to maintain it, how to take it down, how to take it apart, how to field strip it, how to clean it, how often to clean it. You need to learn the fundamentals of marksmanship and shooting precisely, okay? It's really not acceptable to carry a gun if you can't hit the broadside of a barn. You become a menace to society, and we don't want that. You have a higher standard of responsibility to live up to if you carry a gun. And you will be judged by that higher standard of responsibility if you are negligent or if you use your firearm inappropriately. We don't use firearms to intimidate people. Firearms, defensive firearms, are simply there for one purpose and one purpose only in civilian life, and that is to save lives. Defensive firearms are used only in defense of life. And you need to also learn in a defensive handgun course, what do you do if your gun stops running? What do you do if your gun stops working, if it stops, if it malfunctions? How do you clear it? How do you figure out what kind of malfunction it is? Do you just throw the gun on the ground and run away? No. You need to learn how to do that, and that requires a course specifically designed for that purpose. If you're going to carry a gun, and because you're being held to a higher standard of responsibility, you need to learn conflict resolution skills. Carrying a gun is not for hot-headed individuals. So you need to learn how to avoid conflicts and disengage. We don't use guns to intimidate. When you read your legal documents for Florida and Virginia, they specifically state what the penalties are if you draw a gun to intimidate or in anger, and they are not pretty. You need to learn how to communicate and how to move under stress. That's something that we can't possibly teach you in a short course like this. Again, a defensive handgun school, like what we run. Personal Defense Solutions runs both one-day and two-day courses of instruction, classes on both defensive handgun and home defense shotgun. And you need to learn how to shoot, not only on a square range, but under stress. The stress of a lethal force encounter is going to change the picture markedly. And therefore, it is important to learn what happens in a deadly force encounter when deadly force is warranted. And that is what's covered in those kinds of classes. You need to learn about less than lethal force options, because guess what? The last resort is the gun. First resort is to avoid the conflict entirely, and there's a whole bunch of options in between. Maybe you need to learn about pepper spray, or you need to learn about how to run fast, how to beat feet. Less than lethal force options, very, very important. Concealment techniques. You need to learn about concealment techniques, because concealed carry means out of sight, concealed. You don't want to carry openly. Now, I'm carrying openly right now because I'm at a range, and notice I'm wearing a holster that has a retention strap on it. Open carry in Pennsylvania is legal, but it's not a good idea because you're broadcasting to the world that you are carrying a gun. And if you're sitting at the bar, or you're sitting, because you can sit at the bar in Pennsylvania armed. In fact, they just passed a law in Virginia that allows people to go into restaurants that serve alcohol carrying concealed. You used to have to carry openly, which is ridiculous in Virginia, in order to legally be able to go into a restaurant that serves alcohol. In Florida, by the way, you cannot carry inside of a bar, and you can't carry openly. But you can carry in a restaurant that serves alcohol as long as it's concealed. That's in Florida. Yes, sir?
You know, I've thought of that before. So let's suppose you intend to take your wife out for dinner and family. You can't leave it in the car. That's illegal.
Where?
In your car. Can you leave it in your car?
Well, the question is, can you leave a firearm in your car? And the answer is, if you leave a firearm in your car, there's no law against leaving a firearm in your car if it's locked and it's secure. If you can't carry inside a facility, such as a federal facility, a courthouse, a police station, a law enforcement agency, and you're carrying, then you have no other alternative but to leave your firearm locked up in your vehicle. So there's no specific law against it. There are some jurisdictions like Philadelphia that are going to give you a lot of trouble if your car is stolen or if your firearm is stolen from your vehicle, which isn't fair, because if you're in Philadelphia and you're going to court, let's say, and you're carrying legally, well, you know, you have to do something, and they're supposed to, when you go into a facility, they're supposed to give you a storage facility where they check your firearm and you can basically leave it there. So it just kind of like, it's sort of, you know, there's a weasel factor, because, you know, you're not technically allowed to go onto a property like a restaurant that says no firearms allowed. Although you're not committing a crime, if they were to know that you were carrying a firearm, they could ask you to leave. So if you did leave, like let's say you went to Citizens Bank Park to the Phillies game and they found that you had a firearm because they patted you down, not that you should let them, then you would have to go back to your vehicle, obviously secure your firearm, and then go back to the game, because you wouldn't want to miss another episode of Jimmy Rollins hitting a 2-run homer down the right field line. So does that answer your question?
I guess the answer is yes, but.
Yes, but.
Yes, but worry about it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so concealment techniques are very important, but if you do carry openly, which is your right in Pennsylvania, and it is also your right to carry openly in Virginia, don't carry in an open top holster. Make sure you're carrying like the police carry, in a rig that has some kind of retention mechanism so that you're not vulnerable to a gun grab. And last but not least, you need to learn how to quickly and efficiently present your gun from a holster. That means drawing your firearm from a holster. And you need to learn how to reholster. And those are all things, and shoot from the draw. Those are all things we cover in the defensive handgun class, but these are all things that you need to know if you're going to carry concealed safely and competently.